Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Bitcoin and Cryptos in Spanish. I'm Paulina, a digital assistant guiding you in today's episode. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, pose a serious threat to financial privacy. Unlike cash, which allows anonymous transactions, CBDCs are fully traceable, giving governments and central banks the power to monitor, control, and even restrict spending. This level of surveillance could lead to financial censorship, social credit systems, and loss of individual freedom. While CBDCs are promoted as efficient and secure, they open the door to unprecedented government oversight. In a world where financial privacy is essential for freedom, Bitcoin and decentralized alternatives offer a way to resist excessive control and protect personal sovereignty. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the digital euro and compare it with Bitcoin to understand their benefits and problems. Whether you are an experienced cryptocurrency enthusiast, a curious novice, or something intermediate, this podcast is your gateway to understand the complex and changing world of Bitcoin. Let's start.
Welcome everyone to our episode 152. It has been exactly 16 years, 2 months and 27 days since the first Bitcoin block was mined. In today's episode, we're going to talk about CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and especially about the digital euro that, according to the president of the European Central Bank, is going to be launched next October. So we have special guests today to talk about Bitcoin and the digital euro. So before we start, let's hear our sponsors.
BTC Prague, the largest and most influential Bitcoin event in Europe in its third edition. Whether you are looking to improve your knowledge, find your next great opportunity, or simply connect with other Bitcoin enthusiasts, BTC Prague offers you the ideal environment. More than 200 talks in 4 scenarios. More than 100 companies in the exhibition area. More than 10,000 attendees from all over the world. Don't miss it, from June 19th to 21 in Prague. 10% discount with the code BTCESPANOL. See you in Prague, the Bitcoin capital of Europe. eBTC, the fastest, easiest and safest way to buy and sell Bitcoin in Ecuador through their Bitcoin ATMs. You can buy and sell Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies with cash at all other ATMs. Remember that for more information you can consult their website bitcoin.com.ec.
Okay, Tom, so welcome to my podcast. For me, it's an honor to have you here, someone that is involved in the political perspective here in Europe. So we are going to talk about the CBDC, the European Central Bank digital currency, and I have a really interesting guest here in my podcast today. So Tom, welcome to my podcast.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me. Nice to do this after we met at the Bitcoin conference. So I'm up for all the questions for sure.
Yeah, sure. We met in Bitcoin Amsterdam last year, and it was really one of the best events I went last year in Europe. And I met Thomas because you were a speaker there. So please introduce yourself a little bit so the people that don't know you, so they will get to know you a little bit more about you.
Yeah, for sure. I've been a speaker all the years at Bitcoin Amsterdam. I'm from the Netherlands, of course, and I'm a local politician. I'm here today. Also, I have to work at the city council in Amersfoort. It's a big city in the Netherlands. And I'm the party leader of the National Libertarian Party from the Netherlands. And that's why I was invited to speak at Bitcoin Amsterdam every year to release the questions about the political perspective mostly. And of course, since I'm a libertarian, also around Austrian economics and other economic subjects, but mostly political, of course.
Yeah, for me that was really interesting to know that there is a Libertarian Party in the Netherlands. So because in South America, I'm not sure if there is actually like a Libertarian Party. Most of the political parties in Latin America, they are left or right, and some of them they claim to be like center, but there's not something like Libertarian. We can see something like Libertarian right now in Argentina with Milei, that president
And also
said that he is Libertarian. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And also there's now elections coming up in Chile, I believe. And I see that the party that's polling in the first is also libertarian. But
Yeah, so it's quite new in Latin America. For example, I'm from Ecuador. The elections are going to be in about 3 weeks as well for president. And one candidate is from the left and the other one is from the right. So at least in Ecuador, there's not something like Libertarian Party. And
Mhm.
please, can you explain to the people what is like the main concept of a Libertarian Party?
Yeah, for sure. Well, libertarianism it's based on the non-aggression principle, and that's a bit philosophical, of course, but it just goes around self sovereignty, so that you are the only owner of yourself, of your own body, and so it's your own body is your own property, and only you have a say in what you do with your own body. So that's, yeah, and everything else is like comes from this basis. So it's really something else than normal politics, I guess. It's more ideological as well. So it's based on property rights, and like all your work and all your everything. How do you call it? My English is not first language, of course, but the well, all your work and everything that you put in assets, that should be only coming to you. So labor, that's the word I was looking for. So you
Mhm,
are the owner of your own labor, and everything that comes out of your own labor. So it gives a different perspective on subjects like taxes already. So taxes
mhm,
we see as the government using force on their own people. So this gives a weird perspective when you argue in politics, of course. And as you were saying, most political parties are from the left or from the right, and they see
mhm,
freedom in a different perspective, I guess. I
mhm,
work together with a lot of people from the left and from the right. So
mhm,
mostly the parties on the left, they are very much pro privacy and freedom of speech. So some
mhm,
freedoms, and the parties on the right are more of property freedoms and economical freedoms.
mhm,
And libertarianism is like freedom all over the spectrum. That's
mhm.
actually, yeah, the best explanation I can give.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you understood perfectly. And in all the Bitcoin conference that I've been, I realized that most of the people is like libertarian, as you mentioned. And for example, the talk that I saw you talk in Bitcoin Amsterdam, it was regarding the Bitcoin strategic reserves and national state. It was really cool because you were there with other people talking about that. And as you are in the political perspective now in Europe, and it's been in the last, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks that the president of the European Central Bank claimed that in October this year, the European Central Bank is launching the digital euro. So, as a politician who supports Bitcoin, how do you see the fundamental difference between Bitcoin and a centrally controlled digital currency?
Well, from the libertarian perspective, for sure, we don't want any centralized power. That's the basis of our philosophy. So my personal experience with the financial system is that I've been an activist against like central banking and fractional reserve banking for a very long time, just because it created a monopoly. It created a monopoly on our currency, which our government forces upon us, actually. So it's the private banks that can create the most currency and create the most money, which is mostly digital, of course. And it's our government that actually forces us to use this currency. So it's kind of an intertwined system between the private and the public sector, which is, in my opinion, very unhealthy. And of course, most Bitcoiners think feel this way. And the way we look at central bank digital currency is actually just one step further in the same system, where it gets more centralized and more control over everybody who will use this currency. And there's, of course, different aspects on the central bank digital currency, which are still, yeah, speculative, but I think most people will see. And Christine Lagarde is also saying most of the aspects on the central bank digital currency will include the programmability, so they can program what the currency can be spent on, so they can censor you. You can say you are not allowed to buy this, or you are not allowed to buy Bitcoin with your central bank digital currency, for example. So this is one of the most important aspects of the central bank digital currency that will change the current monetary system, I think. So in my opinion, it goes against personal freedom, and that's why I'm against it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it goes against freedom and against privacy. And as we know, the CBDC is going to be completely programmable, so they would not allow you to buy the things that they don't want. And as you said, that's one of the main difference with Bitcoin, because with Bitcoin, if you are the owner of your keys, you are the owner of your money. You can decide where to buy it, when to buy it, and in the amount that you want as well. And regarding freedom versus control is another topic that you just mentioned. Many Bitcoin advocates argue that the CBDCs can be used as tools for financial surveillance and control. So do you think the digital euro poses a risk to financial freedom in Europe?
Yes, I think so, and of course, it's a bit. You have to look at the history and the geopolitics that we are in at the moment, and of course, there's more going on at the same time. We can see now that they just trying to accept a new. Like the euro bonds, 800 million euros that they want to put into new collective debts of all the countries in Europe, and they want to use it in the European Union. It's a different word, but sorry. The European Commission. Yes, European
I think
Commission. They want
they try to raise that money to spend it in like military. Am I wrong?
Yes, that's true. But when you look at the background, and that's where we go a little bit deeper, maybe you can see there's a lot of great journalists in the Netherlands here, and of course there will be in other countries as well. You can see that there's also an excuse that they say there's the next crisis. But if you look at history, then it's the debt itself is usually the goal. And it was with the COVID crisis, but already, like at the moment, they're saying this 800 billion is it's a new step, and now we'll have collective debt. But this is not true, because in 2007 we were already starting to have a collective debt between all the countries. So they're trying to mislead us a little bit, in my opinion. And you can see that the current system, the euro system, is failing. We can see that the southern countries like Spain and France, they don't have really good bookkeeping, as you can say. They make a lot of debt, and they don't hold it themselves to the national budget. And the northern countries do this a little bit better. So we can see that it's not balanced anymore inside the European countries, and they will make they need the new debts actually to keep the countries together, because otherwise the economic situation in the countries will evolve, and it will move apart too much. And this is what they are saying in a lot of papers as well. And so we can see that, in a lot of instances in the history, we can see that there are different subjects that they say is the reason, but the debt is always been the goal. And it's really, one way you can look at it also is because it's always been $800 billion. So in the COVID crisis, we had the program that's called Next Generation EU.
Yeah.
And Next Generation EU was $800 billion. And a year ago, we had Mario Draghi, and he was asking the countries, we need more money in the European Commission, and I want to get $800 billion a year, is what he was asking for. And now we are a year further, and now they say, well, we need this military budget, and it's going to be $800 billion. But
it's always 800.
It's always been $800 billion, which is a bit peculiar, of course, because different budgets should have different prices, because you don't need the same thing every time. It's just you're going to spend something on the military, or you're going to spend something on the healthcare. It's going to be different budgets. So it's weird that it's always been $800 billion. But when you look at the budgets and do the journalism and look a bit deeper, then you can see that they have this gaps, and they need to yeah, they need to fill in the gaps, and it needs
Hmm.
$800 billion to do this.
Yeah.
It's so, in my opinion, of course, this is a bit maybe going it. It's like an open conspiracy or something. But if you just look
Hmm.
at the budgets, then you can see this. So
Yeah.
what we are seeing is that they, and now I'm going to the point, because the central bank digital currency is the
Hmm.
next step in which they can get a stronger control on all the countries and all the citizens inside the countries to pay
Hmm.
back the debt, because
Mm. Yeah.
this is maybe not an easy concept, but when you take out a loan,
Hmm.
let's say you take out a loan or you take out a mortgage on your house, then the bank
Hmm.
will say, okay, we need something to back it up, and what you will back it up with is your house. So
Hmm.
when a country takes out a loan, the bank also will say, or the central bank, they will always say, okay, we need some assurances and we need something to back it up. But what is the backing of the obligations or like a national loan? It's the
Hmm.
taxpayers, and
Hmm.
the taxation that they will get, that's their income,
Hmm.
which they can pay back the loan later.
Hmm.
So when you look at the backing, you can say, well, we need backing. This backing is like a harder asset than the other backing. You know, when you go into finance, you know that there's a difference between different kinds of backing. So if you have backing that's more stable and more under control, it's worth more. So
Hmm.
for me, you can
Yeah.
extrapolate that the income of a country is better backing and worth more if the citizens are more under control. And in my
Hmm.
opinion, this is what the central bank digital currency will do.
And now that you mentioned, that's actually something that the president of the central bank, she mentioned during the when she said she is going to implement the CBDC in October, because she said with the CBDC they will have more control under the savings of the people, so they can move the savings to better investment instead of being there doing nothing. So it makes
Yeah,
sense
for
regarding what
sure.
you said. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what she's saying now as well. Like the personal savings, we need to. It's just withering away in the banks. We need to put it to good use. That's, yeah. That's really
Yeah.
something to say. You know, like that's our money, and they just want to take it and invest it themselves. So this is
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
exactly what they want to do.
Yeah, it really makes sense. Well, regarding privacy concerns, so traditional cash transactions allow for anonymous payments, as you know. So while the digital euro will be likely fully traceable, so how do you see this impacting the privacy rights in the European citizens? Because as you mentioned, this will be implemented in probably all European countries, all part of the European Union.
Yes, well, the privacy aspect is one of the most important, of course. And as we see with Bitcoin, of course, the blockchain and the ledger itself is also completely transparent. But if you want, you can still download a wallet that's anonymous, right? So it's not private, but it's anonymous. That's a different layer. And with the central bank digital currency, you have like a blockchain, the ledger, which is of course centralized instead of decentralized. And also to get an ID, to get an account, of course, it's everything is linked to your personal ID with all your information and like your passport and everything integrated. So there won't be any privacy anymore, because all the transactions will be public, and the wallet will also be totally public.
Yeah, yeah, it makes completely sense. As she mentioned as well in another interview, she said that it will not be completely private, so they will have control over the
Mhm.
CBDC, so they will be able to see where you are using, when you are using it, in where places are you paying, and all that stuff. So as you mentioned as well, if a country takes a loan, so the like the warranty will be the taxpayers, so they will see everything how the taxpayers are using the money and all that stuff. And even they can put some barriers, for
Mhm.
example, if they don't want the people to, as you mentioned, just to buy Bitcoin, because usually the people use the electronic money to buy Bitcoin through exchanges. And so
Mhm.
they will put some sanctions, or they will block the the exchange, or your money. So it's really something to take in account, because I talk with some friends here in Europe, and they are still not have any knowledge about the CBDC, because most of the mainstream media is just selling the idea that the CBDC is the best option because it's time to be like a new technological country and all that stuff. But I think there are a lot of risks that the people is not aware. So we already talked about freedom and control, privacy, but let's talk about a little bit about political and economic risk about the digital euro, the CBDC.
Mhm.
Well, this CBDC could be used potentially for control, how people spend their money, enforce negative interest rates, as you mentioned, if a country takes a loan or implement programmable restrictions that we were just talking about. So, how concerned should Europeans be about these risks?
Yeah, well, we talked about the privacy and the control, but the other one you mentioned, like the negative interest rates, it's very yeah, it's an important subject, I think, because this is how the central banks normally do like monetary policy, right? They will, if they lower the interest rates, it makes it easier for the other private banks to take out loans and to invest, and they can do this at a lower rate. And it has also a lot of other implications for, like in the Netherlands, we have all the student loans. The interest rate on the student loans is also linked to the Dutch central bank, and which is also we're linked to the European Central Bank interest rates, of course. So you can see that it has a lot of implications how they do the monetary policy, and it's never been done. Of course, it has been done in the Corona crisis that they wanted to do negative interest rates. But in their opinion, and which is of course true, negative interest rates are not sustainable in a normal monetary system where people can take their money out of the bank. Because if you have your savings in the bank and there's negative interest rates, you will have to pay the bank on your
Yeah.
savings. So
Hmm.
it's different than when you put your bank into a savings account and you get interest. No, you have to pay interest to the bank when
Hmm.
the central bank rates turn negative. Normally they say, well, we can't do this because then everybody will just take their money out of the bank. Then you get a bank run and the whole system crashes. But
Hmm.
they need to do the monetary policy with negative interest rates if they want to, let's say, kick the can down the road, because we have
Hmm.
so much debt now in the world and so much debt in Europe and in the different countries that
Hmm.
they can't raise the interest rates, because then the countries will go bankrupt. We've
Exactly.
seen this
Hmm.
with Greece
Hmm.
in Europe, and we are seeing it now actually with Italy and with France. Italy, they had to save. That's what happened in 2007 when Mario Draghi started
Hmm.
buying up the Italian state bonds.
Hmm.
So they're between a rock and a hard place, and they kind of need to be able to set up the negative interest rates to prolong the system, to let the debt system go on. So,
Hmm.
but in the normal system, they can't do this because, as I said, you will create a bank run and destroy the system. But in the central bank digital currency system, it's not just that they can program your money and say, well, you can use it only for these items. No, they can also say, you can only put like a 3,000 euro max in your account. And
Hmm.
after a week, if you haven't spent it, it's gone. And they can also
Yeah.
say, well, you can't take your money out at this moment. So they
Hmm.
can stop a bank run just by pushing a button, of course.
About them.
So
Yeah.
this kind of control. Of course, they won't tell us that everything will be ethical. They say they won't
Hmm.
use this kind of control for these purposes, but we can
Hmm.
see that when there's a crisis, that they will use this and that they will need the negative interest rates. And the central bank digital currency is the new thing that will give them this option.
Hmm. As you mentioned, I think it's called like the PIGS countries. It's Portugal, Italy, Spain, and Greece. I think that's like the initial letters for the PIGS country. I didn't know that most of them, or nearly all of them, they are more than 100% in debt, uh,
Mhm.
comparing like their annual income. So that's really crazy. So as you mentioned, the CBDC can force them to pay back all that money. And also something interesting that you mentioned is like the CBDC can force you to spend that money in a certain period of time. That's also something crazy. So they are forcing the money to move instead of like improving or encouraging the people to save the money or to invest the money. So that's really something to take into
Hmm.
consideration regarding the CBDC. And well, as you know, this is a Bitcoin focus on. This is a podcast focus on Bitcoin. So let's talk about centralization versus decentralization, because one of the Bitcoin's greatest strength is decentralization, making it resistant to manipulation. So how do you think the centralization of CBDC impact the financial sovereignty, and could it be weaponized by governments or central banks?
Well, yes, of course. The centralization is actually, it's like the umbrella of all the other topics that we were already discussing. So the centralization is like you do not control your own keys like with Bitcoin, and you do not control your own funds. So it's just it I it's to me it's actually weird that they are using a central bank digital currency on a blockchain, because they could have just used any other database, because it's all centralized anyway. It's just the blockchain will give us like the feeling that it's decentralized maybe, and that we are more in control of our own money. But it's totally centralized, and the funds will be at the central bank, in my opinion. So
Mhm.
if even if they say it's in your account, if you're not free to spend it how you want, or to take it out how you want, then it's not yours, right? Like
Exactly. Mhm.
ownership, it means that you are the sole person who is able to make decisions with how you want to spend
Mhm.
it. And with a central bank digital currency, this is never true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that when a lot of people ask me about new digital currencies or new cryptocurrencies, I tell them just to analyze the project, and if it's not completely decentralized as Bitcoin it is, so they could just use a database. So there's no reason to call it
Mhm.
like a blockchain if it's completely centralized. And as you mentioned, in this case, it will be completely centralized by the central bank digital currency, the Central Bank of Europe. So it makes no
Mhm.
sense about to use a blockchain. And so that's the main difference between centralization and, and decentralization. But also I heard the president of the central bank mentioning that one of the reasons to implement the CBDC is also for financial inclusion. So the
Mhm.
euro could be, or the euro can be claimed to bring greater financial inclusion. So in your opinion, is this a genuine benefit, or is simply a narrative to gain public acceptance?
Yeah, for me, it's only a narrative, of course. So the what they mean with inclusion is to give people access to like a bank account and to financial instruments. And like in Europe, this is not really an issue. Like everybody almost has access to a bank account. It's not like
Mhm.
Africa or South America, where it's very
Yeah.
different. And they in Europe, they will say they use as an argument that I believe it's like 97% of the male population has a bank account, and only 75% of the females
Mhm.
has a bank account. So in some countries, maybe in like Balkan countries or something, of course, it's still not as well developed as maybe in the Netherlands or in England or in other countries. So of course, there's still people that don't have a bank account.
Mhm.
But to say that this will give these people financial inclusion is, of course, yeah, not really an issue in my opinion. And everybody who wants to have a bank account, they usually can. And
Yeah.
if they don't have access to a bank account now, because maybe they are oppressed in any way, then um, how will we find these people and give them a central bank digital currency? You know, it's
Exactly.
just, in
Yeah.
my opinion, I don't think it's logical to say give this as argument.
Yeah. So as we can see, it's just a narrative to gain public acceptance. And well,
Yeah.
this is happening right now because, for example, there are some problems with the people who arrive here to just let mention Spain, but I saw the same with some friends living in Germany or in France, for example. When you arrive here as a student or any type of visa that you have, so they ask you for a lot of documents, and some of these documents, the first requirement is to have a bank account. So you are not
Mhm.
able to have the document that the bank is asking, because a document of that government institution is asking for a bank account. So it is completely like a joke here because they say, okay, you need the document A, but in order to have a document A, you need a bank account. And you go to the bank and the bank say, okay, but in order to have a bank account, you need a document A. So it's like a game there because it's really complicated to have a bank account
Mhm.
here. So we can see like it's just a narrative like to gain public acceptance because it's going to be centralized anyway. And so I would like to have your opinion regarding the political overreach because countries like China have been using the CBDC for years now to restrict access to funds and based on social credit scores. So we saw in YouTube there are plenty of videos about the social credit scores in China. So could you see something similar, a model similar developing in the European Union, even I don't know, directly or indirectly?
Well, yes, of course. I'm always afraid of government overreach. That's why I'm a libertarian. But yeah, it's just when the option is there. That's like for me, it's like the central point of failure, you know. And we can see that when you build this system, where there's an option included to become like a totalitarian system, then it's just a very big risk because even if you say like, okay, our government at the moment, it's not totalitarian, it's very ethical and I like everything they do, you don't know what's going to happen at the next elections. And we can see that they've been using crises uh, to suspend democracy and to say to do yeah to take the rights of individuals away many times also in Europe. And like, of course, we can see in the corona crisis, of course, they give arguments for the why they do it, but we can
Hmm.
all agree that they took the rights away from people at that moment. And
Hmm.
now, of course, we have a few wars like in Ukraine and Russia. They are saying,
Hmm.
well, we need to do everything we can because of this war. And they
Hmm.
always use something to um, how do you say it, to like yeah, it's not oppressing us, but to make us afraid. Like they try
Hmm.
to make us afraid with different crises.
Hmm.
And the only thing happens is that they take our rights away a little bit more every time. So in
Hmm.
my opinion, it's one crisis away and then we can get a totalitarian government. It's just always a possibility, you know, and corruption can happen everywhere. So
Hmm.
when you build this system, it's just like, yeah, of course, it could be okay when you have an ethical government, but who's going to be next? So it's always a very big risk.
Yeah, as you mentioned, for example, I just saw I have some friends and family living in Germany, and I saw like the news there are every single day always saying that, for example, the war is going to start tomorrow. So that's one of the excuses even to start this spending, let's just say, 800 billion euros again. And we can see different approaches. For example, like the United States, they just push back in the CBDC creation. We saw now Trump embracing cryptocurrencies and even creating like a Bitcoin reserve fund instead of being like adopting a CBDC, and we see a completely different approach
Mhm.
in Europe. And well, as educators, as Bitcoiners, how politicians or activists do you think can educate people about the risk of centrally controlled digital currencies?
Yes, I'll answer this question in a moment. I wanted to add a little bit first because you were mentioning friends in Germany. Well,
Hmm.
next to the 800 billion that they're trying to collect in the European Union, Germany
Hmm.
also their government. They just had elections in Germany, and now the current government, which is not yet the new elected government,
Hmm.
they pushed through $500 billion in debt that they want
Yeah,
to
you're
give
right.
to
Hmm.
Ukraine. And they did this because they could only do this by changing their own constitution, which
Hmm.
is, of course, it's a very big step to make. Like their
Hmm.
constitution is like almost set in stone, and they need two-thirds of their government to vote on it to change it. And they had
Hmm.
to change it to create this $500 billion in debt because
Hmm.
in Germany they had in the constitution that they are not allowed to make as much debt because, of course, this is very bad for inflation and for the people. And now they changed the constitution just a month before the new government would come into power, and they would not be able to do it because they would not have 2/3 of the government. So it's
Mhm.
you can see this is just an example of how totalitarian it can get when they want to. This is
Mhm.
not democratic anymore. And
Mhm. You can't do that with Bitcoin. It's 21 million tokens, and you can't change it.
yes, and like even 2/3 in the government, it's a big number, of course. But with Bitcoin, like to do a hard fork to change anything, you need 95% of consensus, which is, I
Mhm.
think, in my opinion, not doable anymore. So it's very different.
Exactly. Mhm.
So now I need to answer your question, but I forgot about it.
My question was because, as you know, many people are still unaware of the
Oh, yes.
CBDC truly entails. So, how politicians, activists, or
Mhm.
Bitcoin advocates can educate the public about the risk of the CBDC?
Yes, for sure. But yeah, well, mostly in politics, I don't see a lot of activism. So as you were saying, there's left parties and right parties, but even like in United States, there's now an exception. But even in their Congress, the Conservative Party, there's also a lot of people who still want to raise the debt ceiling. And in my opinion, it doesn't really matter if you're on the left or on the right wing in politics. All of them want to spend a lot of money, and in my opinion, this is a problem. And of course, this is how they win elections as well. They win elections by doing promises to the people who want to vote for them. And they have to do this by spending money, of course. But nobody likes it when a politician says, okay, I will raise the taxes to do this. They will not vote for you. So all the politicians on the left and the right, they know they have like a cheat code. And the cheat code is like the money printer to collect debt and to take on more debt to give the promises to the people that they vote for. And you can see that it's been a very long time that the politicians on the left and on the right, they are not honest with the people on the implications of this debt, like the inflation. And the inflation just means that, okay, you will not have to pay for the stuff I'm giving you. You will not have to pay for my promises, but your children will pay for this. And this is, of course, yeah, in my opinion, it's very unethical, and they are misleading the public constantly.
Mhm.
And then they do this on the left and on the right. So, in my opinion, this is why I'm so activist, and most Bitcoiners are really activists,
Mhm.
because we need to get this truth out, that the politicians will not say themselves, because it gives the power to the politicians as well. They will
Mhm.
get elected into office easy if they can give these promises without the negative consequences. So
Yeah.
this is
Mhm.
why I feel like it's not really about Bitcoin. This is the inflation and the money creation. This is the problem that is currently, yeah, in my opinion, destroying the whole financial system and oppressing the people. And
Mhm.
of course, we believe that Bitcoin is the solution and it's the best option. And in my opinion, it's also the other way around. It's very beautiful to see that all the activists in the Bitcoin space, like when somebody reads the book, like the Bitcoin Standards,
Mhm.
in my opinion, they become a little bit more libertarian, because when you
Mhm.
know about how inflation works and how this money creation works, then
Mhm.
you see behind the veil of politics a little bit more. And so this is why I feel that the Bitcoin community is beautiful. There's a lot of people who want to speak out and who want to do everything they can to tell the truth, and we see that it is growing. So in my opinion, that's very positive. But that's what I would like to say, is that everybody needs to help, and everybody can help. It's just by telling people about, give them the books on Bitcoin, and letting them leading them to podcasts or anything, and
Yeah.
just tell them how inflation and money creation works. And then it gives people, it changes people, it gives them a very different perspective on politics and on how everything works, because then they will know that there's no free money.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree because as Bitcoin advocates as Bitcoin educators. So for example, this podcast is being educating people for about 4 years, and I receive a lot of feedback from people in Latin America. So last year I was able to spend there some months, and I had a lot of feedback from the people that they didn't even have idea what Bitcoin was. So they still hear Bitcoin as some cryptocurrencies, and they are still scared because they think it's completely like a like a Ponzi, but now thanks to the podcast, they learn a lot. And something interesting that you mentioned is the Bitcoin standard, because I think that was one of the first books that I read. And I think you're right when you said when you read that book, you became like libertarian, because before that book, I didn't know what was it, like the concept of to be like a libertarian. And something interesting that I just wanted to mention, I think was one of the previous questions that we just were talking about, is about the I think about the CBDC, that was one of the excuses, is like to gain public acceptance. But for example, we saw in El Salvador that in 2021, when they adopted Bitcoin, I think it was like 20% or even 30% of the population, they had bank accounts, and thanks to the Bitcoin law, most that they say 60 or 70% of the people was, let's say, not bank, but they have at least like a Bitcoin wallet, so they were able to transact with Bitcoin, because before they were not able to even be part of that like financial monetary system. So that was really cool. In January, I spent there some like a
Mhm.
week or something like that, and I saw the people now selling the products in the beach or in the city, selling food using like the Bitcoin wallets. And before they were not able to do that. They were just using cash. They didn't have even a ATM close to them, so they had to take like 1 hour or 2 hours by bus just to go to an ATM. And now they are able to be included in a financial system just using their phone. So that's really something remarkable to mention about the Salvador. And well, just talking about Bitcoin, as I told you, I was in El Salvador. Let's talk about adoption Bitcoin as an alternative to the CBDC. If the digital euro becomes the dominant payment system in Europe, because it seems like it's going to be the reality. So how can Bitcoin still be used as a tool for financial freedom? And should governments be encouraged to recognize it as a legal tender, or not just as a legal tender, but let's say as to adopt it or embrace it, as we see it in the United States is happening? What do you think about?
Yes, well, in my opinion, I think with the CBDC, you can see that they want to like that they're trying to close the door for people to have financial freedom. Like in the end, of course, it's going to not going to happen right away, and they will drag it out. But in my opinion, the CBDC will give them the option, and in the end, this could be the end goal. Like we are all in the like a financial prison, right? Because it's all centralized and it's under control. But in my opinion, Bitcoin will always keep the door open. It will keep the door slightly open for people to escape the prison, because with Bitcoin you can have self custody and nobody can stop you from doing transactions. And so it's like they can try and regulate it, and they've done in Europe a lot, of course, with the MiCAR law and everything. But the only thing they can regulate is the exchanges, and they can't
Mhm,
exchange the individuals and the
mhm,
individuals that are just downloading a wallet and transacting with each other with Bitcoin. If you do
mhm,
this like anonymously and you get your Bitcoin in a way that is not from an exchange, but like you have a company and you're just accepting Bitcoin for the product that you give to people, then
mhm.
there's nothing really that the government can do about it. If they try to become more totalitarian, then Bitcoin is always the way out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just like it's a yin yang movement, like it's black and white. And when they try to oppress more, then also Bitcoin will become more popular, because
Mhm,
people know that it works and they know they can do transactions with it. And if they don't like the totalitarian government anymore, then they more will go into Bitcoin. And so, in
mhm,
my opinion, it's very important to have like other countries and other systems. In
mhm,
the Netherlands, we also have Arnhem, Bitcoin City. Arnhem is a really big city, and
mhm,
there's in the city center. There's like 60 shops also where you can pay with Bitcoin. Also like groceries, so you can live and do your everyday shopping and live off Bitcoin if you want to.
mhm,
And it's in my opinion, it's very important to have like this other option that's always available, that people can see, well, Bitcoin works, why don't we use this? Then we don't have a totalitarian government. So that's what I'm saying. Like they're trying to build a cage, and Bitcoin will always leave the door open for us.
mhm. Yeah, I didn't know that there's a city in the Netherlands where you can pay with Bitcoin. Well, what's the name of that city?
It's Arnhem. I can write the name in the chat, I think.
Uh,
Oh
Yeah,
no, I can't
perfect.
write in the chat. No, it's
Yeah, yeah,
Arnhem,
okay.
Arnhem Bitcoin City, and it's yeah, Patrick van der Meijden. It's one of the biggest Dutch Bitcoin activists, and he does conferences also over here. And he created this circular economy, and it's the biggest one in it's the second one in the world, because the first
Yeah.
one was in Berlin, but Arnhem was the second one, and it's still the biggest one, and it's the longest running circular economy. So it's from 2013 they already started, and now it's yeah, it's still 60 shops that are accepting Bitcoin, and where you can just pay for everything with Bitcoin if you want to. So that's really important.
So you say 2013.
Yep. And in
So it's been like 12
2017,
years. Okay.
it was actually a famous place, because at
Yeah.
the conference that Patrick organized in 2017 in Arnhem, that was where the blockchain war happened, where we got Bitcoin Cash separating. It happened in
During
Arnhem
the blog
also.
war.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, well, that's quite interesting. Okay, I will take
It
a look.
happened at the
Maybe I can,
conference. They
yeah,
were
I can take
launching
a
Bitcoin
visit.
Cash.
Okay, perfect. So, well, we were talking about a lot of different subjects about freedom, control, political, economic risk, centralization, decentralization, public awareness, and resistance. So, but let's talk about the future of money in Europe. So, looking ahead, do you think the future of money in Europe would be dictated by the CBDCs, or will be decentralized alternatives like Bitcoin gaining more traction? So, what role do you see the Libertarian Party in this case could play this in this debate?
Well, yeah, the Libertarian Party is still a pretty small party in the Netherlands, and the Dutch Libertarian Party is actually the biggest one in Europe from all the libertarian parties. But we are connecting, of course. We have a network of libertarian parties. There's also one in Spain, and but yeah, we see that we are getting a lot of traction, because also we are the only party in the Netherlands that is pushing Bitcoin, and like using Bitcoin to educate people on the financial system. And we are the only party who are for separating money and state. Like we don't want the money to be a monopoly by the state, and we don't want the banks to abuse our money. And I think this is getting a lot more traction, because we can see the last few years that, yeah, in politics, even it's always been like something that was not important for the people, because the politicians always said no, we have a lot of problems with healthcare and housing and everything. And I think we can, more and more people are seeing that the backbone of all these problems is actually the monetary system, and it's growing in attention. So this is very beautiful. And of course, now it's the first time we've had a libertarian president with Javier Milei in Argentina, of course.
Hmm.
And now we can see that in the United States, they have the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, which is
Hmm.
actually inspired by Javier Milei and by
Hmm.
libertarians. Also in America, we have Ron Paul, and Thomas Massey is a libertarian Congress member. So
Hmm.
we can see that it's changing pretty fast. Before, like a year ago, I think if you ask 10 people in the street in the Netherlands, nobody even knew what the word libertarian meant. And this is
Hmm.
changing very rapidly. So for me, it's
Hmm.
really optimistic.
Yeah, yeah. As I mentioned, I was one of them just before I read the book, The Bitcoin Standard. I didn't know what to be a libertarian it
Yeah.
meant, but yeah. So I think now I can consider myself a little bit more libertarian than just before I
Mhm.
met Bitcoin. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I agree, is like most of these problems are based in the monetary system. So, and there is a phrase in the Bitcoiners that we say, fix the money, fix
Mhm.
the world. And I think with that phrase, I would like to finish this podcast because we've been talking like for an hour more or less, and we talk about different subjects
Mhm.
like the future of money, adoption, centralization, economic risk, and freedom and control. So we talk a lot about the CBDC, and I would like to thank you because we talk a lot about this, and I still see that there's a lot of people that they don't know what is a CBDC, and I think with this podcast they could have
Mhm.
a little bit a brief idea of what we are talking about, and just to get ready because it seems like this year is going to happen the CBDC in Europe. So I would like to have your final thoughts, or maybe something that I I forgot to ask you, or just your final thoughts about this episode.
Well, no, I don't think there's a lot to add. Maybe I want to say to everybody that there's this great new video. Actually, it's called "What's the Problem?" I'm not sure if you know it. It's called "What's the Problem?" I can send you a link, and it's by
Yes, please. Yeah.
Joe Bryan,
Mhm,
who is from England, and he has this video. It's half an hour long, but it's about Bitcoin. But it's actually not about Bitcoin. It's explaining the monetary system, but it's something that we've not seen before, because it's actually shows you how all the other problems in the world, like healthcare and like housing, are all he can show us inside with examples in this video why the monetary inflation was always the problem behind these other problems. So I think this is for me. And the beautiful thing is that Joe Bryan is got this video open source. He is
mhm,
also it's also now in Spanish, and it's available in like 50 languages already, because he's got it open source, and everybody from each country, they are allowed to take the video and like change it to their own language. So
mhm,
it's like this really great open source project.
mhm,
And I would say to the people that this is a very interesting video that they should watch if they want to know how the monetary system is like the basis for all the other problems that we see now within the food industry, within inflation, within the housing
mhm.
market. The monetary system is the basis of all these problems, and I think this is a beautiful video that shows this very correctly. And for the rest, thank you very much for the invitation. As I'm saying, I'm an activist, and I want to spread the truth as many times as I want. So I go on each podcast when they invite me.
And for the people who is interested in the activism that you are doing, where they can find you, Tom?
Well, I'm on Twitter mostly, on X. So it's just Tom van Lamoen is my account name, and for the rest, I'm not that much on social media. For politics, X is the most important. And of course, I don't think there's probably any Dutch listeners to your podcast, but they can find me in the Netherlands and vote for me. Of course, it's important.
Yeah, and so I will share all your links. For example, your Twitter account. I will share the link here in the description of this podcast. And also, I found the video that you mentioned. The what's the problem of
Yes,
Joe? What's the name? Is
Joe
Joe
Bryan.
Bryan? Yeah,
Yeah,
Joe Bryan. Yeah, I found it. I found it. So I'm gonna share as well the link
great.
here in
And
the
you can,
description of this podcast.
I think you can also look on the website, what'stheproblem.com, and then you can find the Spanish version as well, in my opinion. So maybe that's good for your listeners.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I didn't know, but I will take a look in the website. So thank you, Tom. So you're always welcome to this podcast. So let's see if the CBDC got launched this year. So
Yeah.
probably we could have another episode at the end of this year, or maybe next year when the CBDC is already live here in Europe. So just to see how is it working. So thank you, Tom, for your time, and hope to see you this year, probably in another Bitcoin conference.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, this has been another episode for this podcast. Remember, my name is Juan Landi, and remember that Bitcoin is the most important event in human history after the creation of internet. So see you in the next episode.
This podcast does not constitute any form of financial advice, but simply the opinion of its participants. Before investing in cryptocurrencies, do your own research.